coleslaw. And swing by A&W and pick up 4 double cheeseburgers loaded. Yeah, deliver to Jim Leahy, Trailer Park Supervisor of the Year, Sunnyvale Trailer Park.
Better be good.
Always is.
Beans. Again.
Shepard Jehoshaphat.
When you reckon it's time for a change, go for the flavor of A&W root beer. Teen burgers, fresh onion rings.
Don't worry, Cookie. You can still drive the jug wagon.
When you don't want to go for the usual, go for the flavor at A&W.
Did that commercial hit you in that sweet nostalgia spot? If so, then you might be in the same boat as me and are wondering, where did the great root beer go? Maybe a better question is, when did he show up? He was so pervasive in Canadian pop culture for so long. A&W was almost a byword for fast food well into the 2000s when McDonald's had taken the #1 spot. Why was it that all other fast food restaurants would lean into human figureheads, while A&W would drop the burger family concept and pivot to a silent but friendly brown bear who had an affinity for orange tam o' shanters? Let's dive in. If I post up these mascots in their 1970s configuration, I would bet that most of you could name them. Do you notice anything else that they have in common? They are all humans in some form or way. Yes, they have pals who may be french fries or a cheeseburger, but the main face of the company was human. The A&W burger chain was no different. In the 1960s, they introduced the burger family mascots to promote a hamburger for everybody in the family. It was a fine campaign, but maybe too little too late. The company had a hard time competing with the up-and-coming KFC and McDonald's, despite being older than both. By the 70s, A&W operations were in decline, and the American chain sold off their Canadian franchises to Unilever Canada, a subsidiary of a British consumer goods management company. What the Americans didn't see, and the Canadians did see, was that A&W wasn't in decline as much as it was being forgotten. People still love the onion rings, root beer, and teen burgers, in Canada at least. A&W had a dominant presence and a head start in the country. By the time McDonald's opened their first restaurant in Richmond, BC in 1967, A&W already had over 200 restaurants dotted across the country. They just needed a new coat of paint, a new mascot perhaps. So in 1972, they contacted an advertising firm, J. Walter Thompson, looking for a specific creative mind whose name was going around the industry. Enter Ron Woodall, the savior of my favorite onion rings. I didn't think the story was going to garner any legitimacy unless I spoke to Ron himself. So I fired up Facebook and pitched my questions to someone I hoped was the right Ron Woodall. Turns out he was, and he was more than happy to share his story with me. Throughout the 1960s, Ron had become an award-winning cartoonist and well-respected in the advertising world for his quirky but charming commercials. His radio spot for the BC Egg Board and TV commercial for the Scott's Paper Towel Company would cement his place at J. Walter Thompson. When A&W approached him for assistance and J. Walter Thompson declined, Ron took their case with pride, and the Woodall Workshop was born. According to him, it was a way to get more creative freedoms away from the starched collars of the boardroom. On their first meeting, this is how Ron recollects Unilever pitching their situation. "We don't know how we'll respond to McDonald's. We may or may not stay in the restaurant business. We may be in the bottled root beer business or the real estate business instead. We don't want to show specific food or specific restaurants or specific eating experiences. The only thing we really want is that no one forgets A&W. While we regroup, we protect the brand awareness at all costs." This was music to his ears. Come up with something non-specific but memorable. The A&W brand would be full front and center. Ron thought long and hard about what other places were doing and then immediately did the opposite. Why have Clint Eastwood rep your product when you can have Baloo the bear? I'm not going to put words into Mr. Woodall's mouth, and this is purely speculation on my part, but bears were kind of all the rage in the 60s and 70s. The Jungle Book had opened to rave reviews in 1967, partially because of the supporting cast of Baloo the bear. Hanna-Barbera's Yogi Bear was one of the flagship cartoons of the 60s and 70s thanks to stellar voice work by Dawes Butler, and Winnie the Pooh was receiving renewed attention thanks to Disney's acquisition of the licensing rights. Ron had said in the past, what eventually became the Great Root Bear was already on A&W Kids food packaging in the USA, and he merely reinvented the character. Here's a possible version from 1971. Another mascot that was around at the time was Rooty, the Canadian dry root beer, root bear. I couldn't find exactly a date for its creation, but from what I've read, 1962 is a rough estimate. It's unknown if Ron enjoys the champagne sparkle of Canada Dry. It's probably more likely that beer and bear are just two fun words to say together. Clearly bears were the mascot to go with, and with it already being on A&W packaging, why not use it? So he mocked up some drawings and headed off to Smuggler's Cove just north of Vancouver to pitch the bear to the A&W higher-ups. The A&W folks hated the concept. It had nothing to do with the day-to-day of their restaurants or even related to their brand. A focus group was set up in Toronto to get the public's opinion of the new mascot. Ron, eager to get an uncorrupted opinion, decided to conveniently lose the data from the Vancouver test and told the Toronto group to just focus on what they liked. A concept, much like the commercial you're watching right now, played for the audience. No gags to get stale, no jokes to get overtold, just a cast of wacky characters following the root bear to A&W. It went over well, enough for Unilever to order the commercial. The catch was the budget. To call it minuscule compared to other commercials is kind of ridiculous. It was absolutely tiny. So where is it cheap to film, with underappreciated gorgeous skies and grassy vistas that go on until the end of the earth? Turns out, Alberta, Canada. Edmonton was proposed, but the fast-growing city was too busy to shoot on such a tight budget. All of the nearest rural areas were too full of traffic, kicking up dust, or planes leaving contrails in the sky. That's when it clicked. Pincher Creek was a stone's throw away from Lethbridge, and there were enough Hutterite colonies around there that you could get a perfect glimpse of unadulterated prairie and clean blue skies. So a colony near Waterton was chosen. Hotels were booked past closing season, a ballerina named Catherine was tasked at making Rooty come to life, and characters aping the Marx Brothers, Evel Knievel, Hulk Hogan, and many more were chosen. The weirder and more out of place they were, the better. To accompany Rooty's Sassy Sachet was the iconic tuba theme song. It's possibly more famous than even the bear itself. Here, just listen to the opening. I guarantee you, if you're of a certain age, this is pure nostalgia for you. The ubiquitous tune was crafted by Brian Griffiths, Bob Buckley, and Miles Ramsey. It would be a huge hit, even getting a 45 single release. And Ron actually got a writing credit. From that point forward, the bear was everywhere. After 1974, Rooty would move into the United States with great success, and A&W had scored a hit thanks to Ron, which they marketed into the ground. Stuffed animals, mugs, autograph signings, hockey games, Christmas ornaments, the list goes on and on. The Great Root Bear was everywhere, and so was that unforgettable tuba theme. But all good things must come to an end. By the 2000s, Rooty the Great Root Bear and the jingle that went along with it slowly faded into obscurity. A&W Canada would be bought out from Unilever by the A&W Management Group, firmly cementing the divide between A&W Canada and A&W America. They hired actor Alan Lulu to be the new face of the company, showing off their hormone-free, grass-fed beef. To appeal to the baby boomers, both the Burger family and Chubby Chicken were brought back. Personally, I think Chubby Chicken was a great mascot, but they slowly faded him out as well. That leaves us with just the Burger family in its current iteration. The baby, the teen, the uncle, the mama, the papa, and the grandpa. Rooty wouldn't be forgotten and would return in 2014 for the chain's 91st birthday. He still shows up in promos overseas and recently on the kids' meal packaging. Ron Woodall would have a solid career post-Root Bear. In 1975, he authored a collection of still-life paintings of abandoned houses in Western Canada called Magnificent Derelicts, a celebration of older buildings. In 1986, he was hired as the creative director for Expo 86 in Vancouver. The fair was a massive success, hosting 23 million people and leaving crowds in awe. The rest of his resume is almost too numerous to list. His clientele includes Labatt's, the Smurfs, the CFL, the province of Saskatchewan. I could go on and on and on. Currently, Ron is retired, and when not being pestered by annoying snot-nosed brats like myself, he draws and writes. And I can't thank him enough for helping me out with this video. And that is the story of the Great Root Bear of A&W. What's your history with the Root Bear? How about you tell me in the comments below? And while you're clicking down there, maybe consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.